Minister.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it's been a very interesting and absorbing debate. I thank all of those who have taken part in it. I must say that I take my hat off to my friend, the Honourable Member for Stalybridge and Hyde. Interesting to know that he grew up in Sunderland, and I notice his great, as he said, his great affection for the Black Cats, an affection I greatly share. Niall Quinn, the glory days of Peter Reid, but he could better hark back to the 1990s, and how much does he do so in politics as he does in football. It's a little unnerving, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I may say so, to see the newly hirsute member for Stalybridge, at least as of the last year or three. He's getting an unnervingly close resemblance to the late His Majesty King George V, which I have to say does create a somewhat unnerving impression across the dispatch box when one's trying to respond to the very important points that he's making. And he came, as the Honourable Lady for Sheffield Healy came, with a clear agenda for this meeting, and that was to tell a desperate story of a struggling industry and a country labouring in its automotive manufacturing. And unfortunately, they have both had desperately bad luck in their choice of this debate, because, of course, this gloomy speeches are made. The desire that they call for optimism is expressed. And then, of course, it turns out that Geely and Renault have just announced this pioneering new investment today to become a global leader in new engine technologies. Not only that, it turns out that we've just laid the new charge point regulations, which will make it easier than ever to own an EV. Widely welcomed, I might add, by Mike Hawes of the SMMT on the other side, richly quoted today, and with reason. And of course, fascinatingly, only today Tesla have announced their own intention to become an electricity supplier, which will itself become an enormously important part of that wider systems infrastructure that has been rightly mentioned. So what a day to choose to be gloomy on, what a day of good news, and how much this reinforces the picture of an industry that is dealing brilliantly with the challenges and changes in its own circumstances. I would give way, but I've got so many other points who've actually made speeches that I want to respond to that I hope the Honourable Lady will just let me get to that first. So then let me pick up the point. The Honourable Member for Stalybridge. We can go on, Mr. Deputy Speaker, or they can listen to what the government's trying to say. The member for Stalybridge and Hyde talked about low business investment. And, of course, he was absolutely right that it's not right to pick and choose statistics. One should try to give a full picture. I was therefore slightly surprised that he ignored the fact that business investment has grown steadily since 2010, and that the Institute for Government published a report which specifically tracked the crashing of business investment in this country to the Labour administration and dates the recovery and dates the responsibility and dates the recovery from 2008 to 10. So that is the picture of business investment that the Honourable Gentleman is asking us to get to. Now, let me just pick up a couple of other points that were made. My honourable friend, the member for Bosworth, absolutely rightly highlighted MIRA. What a great facility that is. What a fantastic testing opportunity they satisfy for this country over the next few years. He's absolutely right. Of course, he will be aware, as regards, he was right to talk about grid connectivity. He was right to mention Triumph Motorcycles, a business I met only the other day. But he, I think, would have wanted to mention the strategic framework which was announced last year for electricity provision. And if, as he says, there's a report coming soon, he can speak from his PPS context and knowledge of that, then I can only applaud that. The Honourable Member for Worsley and Eccles South worried about the rollout of charge points. Well, I hope she will be reassured by the new regs that we've laid on charge points only just now, welcomed by Mike Hawes of the SMMT and by many other players across that industry. But I also hope she'll be pleased that Charge UK, representing the charge point operators, have announced that £6 billion is going to be invested in charge points across this country over the next few years. And that is a direct result of the ZEV mandate, because what the ZEV mandate does, very much in the systemic way that the other party recognises, in fact parties across all this House recognise, is it ties the creation of charge point infrastructure to the support for EVs. And it's those two things that will grow together. And it's by aiming against that target of specific EV numbers coming into this country, being sold in this country. It's that ability to aim that creates the priming for private investment, and rightly so. I was very pleased to hear the contribution from the member for Birmingham, Perry Barr, and I salute him as an apprentice in this House. I think it's fantastic. He was absolutely right to raise the topic of apprenticeships, and as he said, echoing a former member of this House, education, skills, I completely agree with him about that. Skills are very important, and let me just remind him that, of course, only in my own constituency we are pioneering a specialist new STEM technology university, the New Model Institute for Technology and Education. That's just the kind of thing that can be used to build skills and to prime levelling up across this country, and I think he was absolutely right to mention it. Let me also now come to the member for Gordon. Now, if I may, Mr. Deputy, what a wonderfully fresh and enthusiastic speech he gave. I was very excited to see that, except that tragically what it turned out to be was a kind of tag team curse on both your houses misery exercise, relitigating Brexit long after that horse has left the stable, and rightly picked up by the member for Stalybridge and Hyde, who did not want to be drawn on the issue of Brexit, and I understand why, because the country took a decision and we are working with the consequences. But what the gentleman also said, the member for Gordon, was that my honourable friend, the member's speech, was the length of time it would take to charge an EV. Now, 35 minutes, and a brilliant speech it was too. That's not quite true, but it is absolutely the ambition that we want to get to for all EV operators across this country. We want them to be able to charge very rapidly while they go in and pick up a cup of coffee in the usual way. The member for Llanelli, I don't know where, there she is, thank you. I thank her very much indeed for her comment. She asked for a renewable energy focus, and she's absolutely right to do that, and I hope I can reassure her by reminding her of National Grid, who reported that in 2010 there was less than 20% of our energy was renewable. In 2022, last year, over 50% in 5 months of the year. That's tremendous progress. She may also be pleased to know that coal, which was 43% of electricity generation in 2012, is now 1.5%. So that's tremendous progress in both of those fronts.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Listening to the Minister's response, I wanted to give him the opportunity to correct the record, because not only does he seem to not be living in the same planet as us, he's clearly not in the same chamber, because the Minister referred and implied that I hadn't spoken in this debate, and I gave a very lengthy speech on the issues that we are facing in Luton right now, and I would invite him to correct the record at the dispatch box.
I'd be very happy to respond to what the honourable lady said. That's actually not what I said. What I said was I wanted to respond to the speeches, and therefore I would not take interventions at that time. And I, of course, will. And I will, of course. If she would prefer me to not to respond to her speech, but to take her intervention, I'll do it now. Let her make her intervention.
I thank the Minister for finally allowing an intervention. The Minister talked about optimism. Does he feel optimistic that the manufacturing industry is now facing a 10% tariff on passenger cars and a 22% tariff for vans? Does he believe that we should all be optimistic about that future, or does he believe the reality that this is a cliff edge facing the manufacturing industry?
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if that's the best she can do, she would have better to wait till my response for her speech. No, the truth of the matter is that this country is, of course, engaged in discussions with European partners about the circumstances. We export an enormous number of cars. That's a very important fact from their point of view, as it is for ours. And those negotiations and discussions take place. And it would be futile to discuss these matters in public. We all know that none of these negotiations are ever done in public, and that includes commercial negotiations, which the party opposite appears to wish to be done in public as well. Let me just proceed a little bit more. The lady from Luton South touched on, as did the member for Wansbeck, the issue of new, as did the member for Sheffield Heeley, the issue of new gigafactories. Well, I would just like, and perhaps I can close by inviting further comment on this from the opposite bench if they wish to discuss it, but this is a much heralded part of the Labour strategy. If the Labour Party is specifically seeking to subsidise 8 new gigafactories, perhaps the Treasury bench on the opposite side would like to put on record how much money they're proposing to spend of public money, we should say, that is to say taxpayer money, and how that's going to be funded, because we look forward very much to seeing the plans they've made, and I personally will be interested to see whether they bear any resemblance to market conditions, or whether they show any signs of doing anything other than immiserating and impoverishing the British taxpayer. Thank you very much indeed.